Previously, we've talked about SQL or SQL as the structured query language that a lot of databases use, things like Oracle and SQLite and MySQL. And we can do what we call a CRUD operation, or create, read, update, delete operation through SQL and the SQL language. So in that situation, we have an external data source, and our program is going through an SQL statement of some sort to access data from that data source, update that data, or create even a new table in that data source. So we're going to focus in on the queries. And that's probably what we mostly do with SQL. And so there's a query language within SQL, and the format is select the columns we want from the table, and then some criteria, where the criteria is. And so a statement might be something like select asterisk or star, that's going to get all the columns of the table, from students, that's the name of the table, where year, it's one of the fields, equals freshman. And SQL is very efficient. But what if we have a data collection, an internal data collection, such as an array or a list or a dictionary? How do we do queries on those types of collections? Well, Microsoft created the language integrated query, we often refer to it as LINQ, to do just those kinds of operations, to query a data collection. LINQ is built into the .NET framework, so it's not necessarily a C# thing. You could use LINQ with other languages such as VB.NET, as long as you're tying into the .NET framework, and that means it works on multiple platforms as well that support .NET. LINQ is very similar to SQL in that you're going to have a statement to do a query, and those results are going to go into a variable. So here's our generic format. We're going to use the var keyword and then a name for our result variable equals, and then our LINQ query. And then below that is an example. So results is the name of my result variable. It's going to equal, and very similar to SQL, we're going to get from, and we're going to, in this case, pulling from an array, each item in the array. And I used XYZ as the variable referencing my item. So it could have been from item in my array, or I in my array, whatever you wanted to use. So XYZ refers to each item in my array, and I'm going to extract from my array all of the numbers that are greater than 50. So where XYZ is greater than 50, I'm going to order by XYZ. That's going to put them in ascending order. And then we have a select command to actually pull those items out and put those into the results variable. After that, we might want to use something like a for each loop to go through the results and maybe populate a list box. And we'll do that in the example I'm going to show in a few minutes. But we can also use LINQ for an external data source, which could be a SQL data source, could be a text file, it could be various data sources that are being read into through a data model, a custom class that we create to model our objects, and maybe that's populating our data collection. So here's another example. Using the same generic format of var result variable equals LINQ query, here we have a list called class roster of type student, the capital S, that's going to be the name of my class, but here I'm going to use a variable named student lowercase, so each student in class roster, where the student.age is greater than 21, so I can reference the different fields of that data model. I'm going to order it by student.lastname, again referring to the last name field, and I want to select student. And then again, I might go through a for each loop to populate my collection. Well, let's take a look at this in operation. So here in Visual Studio, I've created a form, and I have a list box named LST original data and another one on the right hand side named LST query results. What I'm going to do for each of these buttons is I'm going to show an original list from which we're going to query using LINQ and display the results over here on the right hand side. So my first button is BTN query 1 and then BTN query 2 and so forth. Let's take a look at the code. I'm going to double click on BTN query 1. And so the first thing it says is show president's list. So I'm going to scroll up here to the top. So I created an array called presidents. That's a string array, and it lists each of the presidents through history, U.S. presidents, from George Washington to Joe Biden, and it's last name comma first, and they are comma separated. So we're going to do a few things with this array. I have another array which is a numeric array. It's just a bunch of integers. You'll see there's some duplications here, like 23 occurs multiple times, 7 occurs twice, and so forth. And then I also have a list of type contact called leaders. There is a contact class that I created. It has properties of last name, first name, city, state, and phone. And those are all public properties. And a constructor to pass those in and populate the record. I also have a method that returns a string called showContact. And all it does, it basically builds a string using string builder of those 5 properties. And that's what we use to display in the each of the list boxes. So I'm going to go back to my form 1 code. When I start up the form, it's going to initialize the components. It's going to clear the leaders list. I'm going to open up a stream reader and I have a file out here called contacts_tab.txt. Let me show you that file. In the debug folder of my project, I have my contacts_tab.txt file. And so it has last name, first name, city, state, and zip that are tab delimited. There are 25 records in this text file. So my stream reader is going to open up that file, it's going to read it, it's going to split it on the tab, each line by line, and add a new contact based on each of those tab delimited fields into my leaders list. Close it, and I have a message box here that says how many contact records were read, and there should be 25. So I have a method called showPresenceList, and it's simply going to clear out the list box on the left, LST original data. I'm going to go through my presidents array using a for each line, and each item being called pres, and I'm going to add to the items of LST original data the value of pres. And then I have another one that shows the contacts list, basically the same thing. I'm going to go through my leaders list, and here I'm going to add, I'm doing contact C. C is my variable for each item in the leaders list, and C.showContact. That's going to print the name, the city, the state, and the phone. Another one called showNumbersList. Basically here I'm going to show the items in the myNumbers array, converting those to a string to add them into the items of the collection. So those are the 3 methods we're going to call in each of our query buttons to display the appropriate item on the left. Now the first button, btn query, I'm going to jump back over here to the design for a minute. I want this button to find all the presidents whose last name is A through L. So we're going to show the presidents list. We're going to use our LINQ query where results equals from XYZ in presidents, where XYZ.compare to an uppercase M is less than 0. That's going to give me all of the presidents A through L. And then select XYZ. We're going to clear our list query, use a for loop then to add each of the items from results. That's where all of my query went into. And we're going to do a for each using ABC as our item in results and add that item to the list. Let me just run this. I'm told that 25 contact records were read. And so here then is the button being executed. We get all of our presidents on the left, and on the right are all the presidents whose last name is A through L in chronological order, because we didn't order them by. And all the names in the presidents array are chronological to begin with. Let's take a look at the second button. It's going to basically do kind of the same thing, except here we want the presidents whose last name is M through Z, and we want to alphabetize this list. So there we go, all the presidents M through Z and in alphabetical order. So let's take a look at that code. So here's the code for btn query 2. We're going to show the presidents list. We're going to perform our query, again going into the variable results. xyz.compare to m is greater than 0. So that's going to give me every president in my array whose last name is m through z. Then I put an order by xyz. That's going to be an ascending order, but instead I could have said order by xyz descending, adding the descending modifier at the end of that line, and that would have printed them out from z to a. And then select xyz. As we did before, we're going to clear the list box on the right hand side, and then using a for each loop, add each of those items from results to the list box. Let's take a look at the third query button. So in the third query, we want to alphabetize the list of US presidents. So this one's pretty straightforward. It's just like we did before, but I'm not doing a extraction using the where command. All I'm doing here is from XYZ in presidents as part of my query, order by XYZ, and select XYZ. And then of course, putting the results in the list box on the right hand side. So as you see, we're on that, we're going to get all the presidents but listed alphabetically. The fourth query, I want to get the AZ contacts and alphabetize last name. So that contact list that we looked at just a little bit earlier, coming from our data file, modeled by the contact class into our leaders list, have people from several different states. I want to find just those from Arizona. So here, my results for the query are going to be from XYZ in leaders. That's my list of contacts, where XYZ.state. So I'm referencing a particular field of that contact object model or contact class where it equals AZ. And then I'm going to order them by the last name and then select that. So once again, once I've done that, I'm going to clear the list box on the right hand side. And using a for each loop, we're going to look at each contact in results. And then we're going to add to our list ABC, that's my variable for each contact, dot show contact. That was the method we had to return the string of name, city, state, and phone. So let's try that fourth query. So here is the original data, and then out of that come all the contacts in Arizona and alphabetized. Now I'm noticing one thing here, that I have a comma after the first name that should not be there. So I'm going to go back and change that show contact method to remove that comma. So I have a comma in here that's being appended. I'm going to get rid of that comma, and let's run their program again. So I'm going to try the LINQ for again, and now I don't have the commas in the names. So it's first name last. These are still over here alphabetical. For query 5, I want to use that number array, and we're going to just simply take each item in my numbers. We're going to order it and then display the results. So we're just going to get the numbers in numeric order, and that's exactly what we get. But the next button, query 6, takes those numbers and we put the query in parentheses, and then I can use the .distinct method on those results to only show the items that are unique, that are distinct. So when I click item 6, notice that before we had 2 7s, there's 2 12s, 2 15s, 2 23s. On this one, it removes the duplicates. So in the upcoming Unique Words project, you're going to go through all the words in a paragraph, extract each word, but you can use the .distinct to remove any duplicates and only show the unique words in that paragraph, or in this case it'll be the Gettysburg Address, or some other text we might look at. The final one here, I'm going to go back to the presidents. I want to show all the presidents whose last name has an A as the second character. So there's all kinds of things you can do with this LINQ process. And the code here, again, is XYZ in presidents, where XYZ.substring 1, 1, that's going to be the second character. So index 1, 1 character in length, .compare to is a lowercase a, and if that equals 0, so it's a match, we're going to basically select that, but we're also going to order this by XYZ. So these again are going to be in alphabetical order, but all the names are going to have A as the second letter, and then we're going to use, again, our for each loop to display those. Here we go. So Carter, Garfield, Harding, Harrison, Hayes, Jackson, Madison, Taft, Taylor, Van Buren, and Washington all have A's as the second letter. So that gives you kind of an overview of how to use LINQ. As you see, it's very powerful and very fast. Great way of querying collections of data. And again, you can use this on any .NET platform. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the C# Xamarin Programming Cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.